So good morning. My name is Jeff Sharp, and I'm the director of the Ohio State University School of Environment and Natural Resources. Thank you for joining us for this EPN virtual event. I'm very excited that we are taking the time to focus on cooperatives and sustainable development with an incredible lineup of speakers. These have been unique and challenging times, and I'm so glad that we have a program today that showcases the importance and value of cooperation to promote sustainable and high-quality food and to improve community quality of life. I know we have a long list of folks who have signed up for this program, and welcome to the many of you logging on now. As you are joining us, please feel free to share with all attendees in the chat box your name and where you are joining us from. Adjust your message to send to all attendees. We are glad you are here today. For those who are wondering, this event is set up so that everyone will be kept on mute during the program and your cameras are not on. So don't worry if you have all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the background. I've got a son drumming next door and a dog that's been barking down the hall. So hopefully I'll get muted before they all get too loud. On behalf of Ohio State School of Environment and Natural Resources, I want to acknowledge that Central Ohio is the traditional homeland of the Shawnee Nation, Miami, Wyandotte, and other indigenous nations who have strong ties to these lands. Today, individuals from a broad range of indigenous backgrounds call Columbus and Central Ohio home. As a land-grant institution, we pay our respects to ancestors and elders and relatives past, present, and emerging. In January, we will host an EPN program that will highlight ongoing contributions of tribal scientists, leaders, and community participants in the Great Lakes region who are working to mitigate and positively adapt to regional climate change dynamics within our region. We hope you join us again in January for that program. I want to thank Hannah Scott with CFAES Center for Cooperatives and Josh Knights with the Sustainability Institute, who first brainstormed with Joe and Nicole what was to be a workshop program on cooperatives with students and companies, then revised it to be featured in the online format that you are experiencing today. I also want to thank the wonderful panel of speakers who will introduce today's topic. I will keep my remarks brief, but because that panel is very highly qualified to speak directly to today's featured projects and our broader theme of how co-ops are uniquely positioned to address today's grand challenges in our rural and urban communities. Please review our agenda for today on the screen. The following speakers, Dr. Ryan Schmiesing, Vice Provost for Outreach and Engagement here at Ohio State, our College Dean, Dr. Cathann A, Kress, and Mr. Doug O'Brien, President and CEO of the National Cooperative Business Association, CLUSA International, will follow me in that order to introduce the work of the Richland Gro-Op. Dr. Tom Worley, Director of CFAES Center for Cooperatives, will join at the end of the program to share some summary remarks. Before I hand it over to Ryan, please read the brief professional bios on the screen from Matthew Stanfield and Walt Bonham, two farmers and founding members of the Richland Gro-Op. Thanks, Matthew and Walt. It is great to have you joining us from Mansfield today. Walt and Matthew's bios are also featured at our program page located at epn.osu.edu. Moderating the conversation today will be Professor Kip Curtis, Associate Professor in the Department of History, and who is also based in Mansfield at our Ohio State campus there. Please note that we will have time for audience Q&A throughout this program. Please notice that in the chat box, Nicole has posted some basic directions. If you have general comments, post those in the chat box, as well as to troubleshoot technological or connection issues directly with our event hosts, Joe and Nicole, in case you have them. We encourage you to ask questions directly to our panelists during this program using the Q&A function that is located in the Zoom taskbar at the bottom of your screen. If you have a specific question for a speaker, then please type in the @ symbol followed by the speaker's first name. We invite your comments and questions and have built-in time at the end of the program for questions to be answered by the full panel, which will occur around 11 a.m. Joe and Nicole are monitoring the dialogue there. In addition, Hannah Scott will be uploading resources throughout the program about cooperatives, sustainable development, and the Richland Gro-Op projects into the chat box. Please note that this program is being recorded and will be published on our EPN YouTube channel next week. Now, Dr. Ryan Schmiesing, Vice Provost for Outreach and Engagement here at Ohio State, will share about his office's longstanding relationship and strong connection and support of the Richland Gro-Op and related projects in Mansfield. Over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you so very much for the invitation to be here this morning and participate in this program. I've long admired the work of EPN and how they've brought communities together over a number of important and timely topics, and this one with the cooperatives is certainly one. As you mentioned, we have a long history with Kip Curtis specifically, the Richland Gro-Op, work of the Sustainability Institute here at Ohio State, and many others that have been engaged in this important project. And I think it's really important that the Office of Outreach Engagement support this. And why do we support it? We support it because it does a couple of things. One is it's a great demonstration of how you bring community together to address a critical issue, specifically in Mansfield. And I think if you look at community in Mansfield, you're talking about the business community, the nonprofit community, public entities like Ohio State and like others who have really come together to create something that's pretty special up there. And we've invested further in Kip's work because we want to know why it works. I think it's important to know that the project itself has impact. It certainly is producing food in a critical area of our state. It's providing opportunities for employment. It's providing opportunities for business startup. But important to me is, why does all of that work, and what role does the institution, the university, and our faculty and staff have in that? I always find it interesting. Kip came to us as a history faculty member, maybe a bit of a non-traditional route into outreach and engagement, but I think it speaks to Kip's commitment to community, the commitment of the Department of History here at Ohio State, and the commitment to OSU Mansfield has in that. So we're really interested in models that work in outreach and engagement. We've shifted our grant funding programs to really invest in assessment of programs, and assessment of the partnerships and what makes them successful. And we think that the Mansfield project is just that. I think it was February, Kip and Walt, the provost and I came up to the Mansfield campus to visit the campus. And one of the things we absolutely wanted to do was to be on site, and you'll see from Walt in a little bit, he's on site. But we wanted to see firsthand where the project was located. It's in the community, obviously, and I wanted to hear from the partners in it. And important to us, I think, as we think about outreach and engagement, is it all starts in the community. It does not start in the halls of academia. It starts in the community with identifying potential problems and then co-creating with us to arrive at solutions. So we think the Richland Gro-Op is an outstanding example of this. We're looking forward to research that comes out of the partnership and how and why the partnership works. And that's why we've asked Kip Curtis to be a faculty fellow with us. Again, we want the project to be successful, but we also want the partnership to be successful, so that when we talk about expanding and replicating, we know exactly what we're replicating and how it can be successful. So my hat's off to the Richland Gro-Op. We're excited to be a partner with them. We're in it for the long term. We have a number of projects at Ohio State that we invest in over time, and I believe this is going to be one of them as we seek to expand to our other regional campuses, Central Ohio and beyond. So thanks again for the opportunity to be here this morning. It's great. I'm looking forward to hearing the panel. And I'm excited to now turn it over to my friend and colleague, Cathann Kress, who's Vice President of Agriculture Administration and Dean of the College of Food, Ag, and Environmental Sciences.
Thanks, Ryan, and good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be able to join you all again. And I'm just so interested in today's topic. You know, as late as the mid-1930s, 9 out of 10 rural homes were without electric service. And it was right around that same time that farmers were increasingly frustrated with their inability to secure affordable insurance or to be able to market their products. And so as farmers sought to figure out ways to do that, to also acquire farm supplies, to borrow capital, to be able to access research to solve their problems, all these things that are necessary for viable food production, they often struggled with how could they get their unique needs met. In all of these situations, farmers and other rural residents turned to each other. They formed cooperatives. That model electrified farms, it opened markets, it leveraged fuel and raw materials, it provided the financial tools and insurance. It also built our very own 4-H program, cooperative extension, and the experiment stations at our nation's land-grant universities, all by leveraging the power of their networks. So it's no surprise to me to think about how cooperatives as a model could also help us as we think about sustainability, as we think about the paradigm shifts that need to happen within our food systems. And so it's really exciting to see the models that are currently operating and what that can look like for the future. I'm really very excited today to be able to also welcome to the program another good friend of mine, and that's Doug O'Brien, who's the president and CEO of the National Cooperative Business Association and CLUSA International. I don't think there's anybody who can probably talk in more detail about the uniqueness of cooperatives than Doug. He works with the cooperative community, both domestically and internationally, to deepen its impact on individuals and communities. He's, I think, led a number of efforts around cooperatives, as well as the work of the White House Rural Council. And much like me, he also hails from Iowa, and I think brings a lot of understanding of rural communities and the importance of the community itself. So with that, I'll turn it over to Doug O'Brien.
Thank you, Cathann, and Kit and Jeff and everyone. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation, and so glad that you chose this as a topic. So Cathann just gave me a really nice introduction. I'm with the National Cooperative Business Association, Cooperative League of the United States of America, NCA CLUSA. It's a mouthful. We're the umbrella group for all kinds of co-ops in the United States. So co-ops exist in just about every sector, well known in agriculture, many of the brand names that we know so well: Welch's, Land O'Lakes, Blue Diamond, Florida's Natural, the list goes on and on, Ocean Spray. And then co-ops also are in the rural electric. The vast majority of the land in the United States is served by co-ops in rural parts of the United States, credit unions, worker co-ops, food co-ops, and the list goes on. What I'm excited about this conversation, because it's one that I talk about quite a bit, and many times I have to introduce it in the conversation, but here it is the topic, and that is, what's the role of farmer cooperatives in sustainability? What's the role of the cooperative business model in that linkage between rural and urban? I think it's a really important topic. So Cathann talked about how people in the United States, and in fact across the world, in fact there's about 1 billion people in the world who are members of cooperatives. In the United States, there's over 100 million people that are members of cooperatives, about 1 in 3 people in the United States. So it's a well-known business model. What is that business model? How is it different than kind of the more conventional C corporation or investor-owned business? Co-ops they're user-owned, they're user-controlled, and they benefit the people who use the business. In farmer co-ops, the members are farmers. In other types of co-ops, they might be consumers, they might be workers, but for farmer co-ops, typically, they're farmers. So that means that this is a business that's not owned and controlled by people outside of the business. And for farmers, that means outside of that rural community or that region. It's owned and controlled and benefits the people, the farmers in that region. So it has a huge multiplier effects, not only financially, but socially and societally, and more so environmentally. So I want to talk a little bit about sustainability and ag co-ops today and in the future. Now, and I want to talk about them in a couple different scales. Using this co-op business model, that means that the members, in this case the farmers and the other members, that they have control through a democratic process of electing the board. That means that the business is going to focus on the members and the members' communities. If the priority for those members is sustainable development and sustainable environmental practices, then that means that business will engage in that type of behavior. And you're going to get different outcomes. You're going to get different outcomes for the members of the co-op, and you're going to get different outcomes for the community. I think at a scale of kind of a local community and regional level, it can be seen, pretty clearly what those, the way water quality is seen and worked toward, the way that soil conservation, the way that wildlife is engaged in. And so this is a business that has a different orientation, and it's on people, and it's on people who use the business. I want to talk about a different scale, and that is kind of large scale. And this here, I'm talking about sustainability, particularly as we think about policy around climate change. And, this continues to evolve. Obviously, things, climate policy will evolve, and maybe it'll accelerate in its evolution in the near term. Hard to tell. What I'm very excited about, and in some ways concerned about, is that policy needs to make sure that farmers are at the table. We know that agriculture does have a huge role to play. They can have a very positive role, and they could have a negative role in the dynamics around climate change. What we want to make sure is that farmers are at the table and are able to contribute what they can. The best way to do that, I think, is through cooperatives. And what I mean by that is cooperatives historically, they have focused on the commodity. It might be a food commodity, it might be grain. But today, I think more and more these cooperatives at scale need to focus on data. That's the thing to own and control, and to make sure that you reap the most benefit from. And I think we all know on this call that the key to really making a change in policy around climate, it will be data. And there's a lot of value in that data. And co-ops are positioned to make sure that farmers are able to use that data that gets the best outcomes, not only the best outcomes for the farmers, but the best outcomes for the community and the nation at large. And I'm happy to talk more about that, either scale, the local scale, or the more kind of national and even global scale of how cooperatives have a lot to contribute into these types of conversations. But I'm really excited to hear everybody else and the work that's going on in Mansfield. So thank you again. And I get to be here for the rest of the time. So hopefully I'll participate through the comment and Q&A, et cetera. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for those introductions. I think I can speak for both Walt and Matthew to say we find ourselves in esteemed company. Our goal today, so we met last week to talk about how to put this all together, and we've got three different stories about the way in which a cooperative and the cooperative structure ended up essentially catalyzing ambitions in some really important ways, and in some of the ways that Doug just gestured towards certainly was in effect for us. It was a solution to a problem that all of us, I think, didn't necessarily know we had. And so each of us in turn are going to tell a little bit about our individual story and how we found our way into this cooperative RGO, or the Richland Gro-Op, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the questions that raises for folks. So again, thank you very much. I'm going to start by sharing my screen here, and so as Ryan mentioned, I'm a historian, and I'm leading a cooperative agriculture food project up in Mansfield, Ohio. And so want to put this in context. Why am I doing that? Like, how did I even get into this space? And that's a picture of our demonstration microfarm there on the bottom of this. I have been for the 11 years of my career in higher education, working extensively in environmental science and studies space as a historian. And when I came up to Ohio State University back in 2015, I was engaged in some questions about this site, which is our campus in Mansfield. It's 650 acres. For the few years before I got there, SENR had been doing capstone. We had identified this as a really rich and valuable ecological site. And I was asked to think about putting some education, putting some development around it. What sorts of things might we do programmatically? And my own thinking was in the environment and thinking about social justice questions as a way of getting at ecological solutions. How might we address social issues with ecology and maybe get better than both together out of it. And we started asking these questions about our community itself. So how might we connect with Mansfield? How might we leverage our campus, which is there in the upper left, with the city and some of its sustainability issues? And we even found some high leverage points that seem like really good places where if you thought about the ecological issues and you thought about the social issues at once, you would have some high leverage sustainability. You'd be able to kind of put sustainable systems into place. And we started developing around those questions. I have a number of different initiatives out the door, but the one that caught hold was this one, and this is the microfarm project. It's gotten the most funding, it's developed the furthest, and so far had the best results. This started like a lot of the things that I do in a classroom with undergraduates, simply asking a question about urban agriculture, which I knew from 8 years of working in it in Florida was kind of stymied by not ever quite realizing what it had promised to do, which was deliver fresh food and economic development to low opportunity spaces in the city. And part of why was it seemed like we hadn't quite figured out how to farm in the city, how to do farming in the city. So the question for the students was, what's the right size? What's that Goldilocks piece for us? And they looked around the country and came up with this, the microfarm. And this is actually our schematic from the class itself. They said about 1/3 of an acre. It needs to be 12 months of the year. So a couple of high tunnels, that's what those white squares are, indoor, outdoor. This is large enough to bring in a profit, small enough to be workable by one farm, one family household. And then we ran a whole bunch of numbers on crops and the potential for market and what could be produced on it, and estimated that in the right set of circumstances, you could get 35,000 net off of this site growing 12 months out of the year. I went down to Columbus and got funding and actually put one in. So they funded a demonstration site here on the campus of Mansfield. And so there's our campus from Google Earth. There's our parking lot. And if you look closely, you can see we exist on Google Earth. So we exist. We built this 1/3 of an acre site on parking lot 7, an unused parking lot, put it on raised beds, and we've been growing data on that site since October 2017, as well as using it as a training site for our first cohort of microfarmers. The idea of this, though, was to try to capture some food dollars, was try to shorten the supply chain. And in Ohio, it's about $135 million leaving the state. Can we redirect some of that? And so here's where the co-op became the answer to the question that we had. And that was, we knew these microfarm sites alone weren't enough. You couldn't produce enough. You couldn't produce it regularly enough. But what if you put in a dozen? And what if you aggregated that and you coordinated that crop planting and that crop growing, and you suddenly had enough on your hands to be able to compete for that food market and redirect some of those food dollars? And so out of the classroom and then out of thinking about this, cooperative suddenly became an answer. And I put together this chart here, which is Mansfield's food deserts and low income census districts with this overlay of this system itself. And I took that image out to the community. I spoke to Deanna West Torrance, who you see pictured here. And so this is the other part of that is critical. And that is that when I showed that to her, it wasn't a mystery to her. She said, I've spent the last 5 years organizing my community. And one of the issues that's risen to the top is food security and food systems. And is it possible to use food systems to create economic development? She had built a bunch of community gardens. She had a farmers market as well, which was underway. She said, this is exactly the thing that we've been looking for and at the scale that we need. So Deanna and I went out and started putting together partnerships in the community, as well as began to organize some of the folks who she'd already circled around urban agriculture to develop and start working on a cooperative. And we put in a grant to the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research that August, and we started organizing a cooperative that fall. At the same time, we had submitted the project to the Alliance for the American Dream. I'm going to go quickly through this, and I'll send a video of this, but we were able to develop a statewide vision for the microfarm project, but I'll pass that along. Cut to the chase. We didn't win the Alliance for the American Dream, thank goodness, because we did get the Foundation for the Food and Agricultural Research grant, which suddenly had us putting this idea and this cooperative into the community. And we had people ready to pull the trigger and organize, two of them who are with us today, the Richland Gro-Op itself. This is the grant that was submitted to Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, and it's from the university side of things, a convergence grant. We're bringing together people from across the campus. We're catalyzing on the left here, extension knowledge. Everything that we did to build this system, we already knew how to do. We just hadn't asked all the same questions at the same time. And then we have a bunch of social scientists who are looking at the impacts, and some scientists looking at the impacts of this on the landscape across the university. So 4 units are at work in this at this point. But the heart of it, and we're going to start talking to a couple of these folks in a minute, was the community itself. This didn't happen without this community being catalyzed, without it already having social capital and ambitions and some institutional support for an idea like this. And so it brought together an innovation, together a business, the county foundation, this great community organization, and it launched what are now 10 new, in Mansfield, 9 farm businesses, which together are aggregated and members of the 10th, the Richland Gro-Op, or membership cooperative. Lots and lots and lots of produce coming off of this. You're going to hear from Walt in just a minute. His food lab, among other things, took the contract to get these microfarm kits up, and they're able to do them in under a week at this point. Once we got the grant itself, we were also facilitated by the leasing, the donation of 12 acres of Gorman Rupp brownfield land. This is where Walter will be talking to us today from. We're able to put up 4 of our microfarms and are in the process of developing a training facility so that we can start a second cohort into the process. So here's a picture of the urban farm site on the ground. One of the really pleasing parts of this was the ribbon cutting for that site, where we got a cross section of leadership from the Mansfield community, unlike we had ever seen in the same place at the same time ever. This was a kind of full community effort in support of this at a time when nationally we're talking about divides. We're very united in Mansfield around this idea. Inside of one of our high tunnels, that's Vince, one of our producers. This is the north end of Mansfield, and so just a couple of aerial shots. This is Groforth Farm, and Matt Stanfield and his wife Amanda have for 10 years been sort of putting together an idea of what a homestead might look like, and this is how it now looks today. They've got a farm on their property there, and we are, as Ryan talked about, asking the question about the success of this catalyst in Mansfield and whether it's possible for it to move out to Marion. Same set of questions, same set of issues as you see on the map, but we have a distinct advantage relevant to this talk today as we go into Marion and any place else, and that is we have a cooperative. We don't need to form a cooperative at this point, and we have a cooperative that has written into its DNA the desire to propagate micro farming as the core, as its core existence, to maximize farmers as a value in the business itself. And so with that, I will pass this off to Matt Stanfield. I first met Matt 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when just after I talked to Deanna West Torrance. I believe it was at the end of that conversation, she said, "You have got to talk to Matt and Amanda Stanfield. These are the people in this community who are most prepared to kind of take on this vision." And boy, was she right. So welcome, Matthew.
Yeah, my name's, like Kip said, my name's Matthew Stanfield. I'm the co-owner of Groforth Urban Farm with my wife, Amanda. I'm currently the president of the Richland Gro-Op, and I'm also principal architect and owner at Field 9 Architecture here in Mansfield, Ohio. And I'd like to talk to you today about what commitment to place has meant for me and my family, and how the Mansfield Microfarm Project and the RGO has helped bolster that commitment. So we purchased our home that we live in 2000 in what turned out to be what was considered one of the worst neighborhoods in Mansfield. Little did we know what we were getting ourselves into and how our lives would be shaped by that naive decision. Our house is located just south of 4th Street on Roland Avenue, about a mile east of downtown Mansfield. like I said, little did we know that in 2000, the corner of 4th and Roland was regarded by law enforcement as the worst corner in the city with regard to drugs and crime activity. Even so, at the time that we moved in to the home, the neighborhood was still full. There was a house on every lot. We were a young and growing family struggling to make ends meet financially, but were able to get some help from some friends and families that allowed us to purchase the home. Looking at it as a purely financial decision, it was a no-brainer. Our mortgage was less than the rent that we had been paying for a smaller house, and we were unwitting first-time home buyers who did not know what questions to ask or the nuances of purchasing a home. In 2003, I earned my Master's of Architecture and became a licensed architect in 2005. This was our ticket out of the neighborhood, or so our friends thought. But by this time, however, we were starting to think of the neighborhood as home. In 2008, I was laid off and unable to find employment. Needless to say, we were grateful to have a small mortgage that allowed us to keep our house. Being unemployed became the catalyst for really starting to become invested in the neighborhood. We were no longer simply living there. We were starting to become involved and invested in our community. From 2011 to 2015, we had our first foray into urban agriculture. Amanda and I founded and coordinated the North Lake Community Garden about a block and a half from our home. While it was a relatively small venture, it gave us a taste for growing food on a scale larger than just a few beds around our house. At this point, living in the neighborhood had truly become part of our lives, and we would not have considered leaving it. Life in the neighborhood had shaped who we had become and how we see the world. There is immense opportunity in our neighborhood, and we hope to be able to seize those opportunities to make a difference in our neighbors' lives as they make a difference in our own. As we watched the houses around us deteriorate and eventually get torn down over the years, we saw an opportunity to start purchasing some vacant lots. We really did not have a particular plan at first, other than to expand our side yard, give us some place to store firewood and grow some food while keeping our backyard intact for our children to play. By 2017, we saw 5 houses immediately to the north of our own property demolished. Starting with a $50 lot from the sheriff's auction, we eventually acquired the additional 4 lots from the land bank. With the exception of the corner lot, we now own all the lots between our own home on Roland going north to 4th Street. We started planting gardens and experimenting with different methods of food growing, thinking we'd be able to grow a larger variety of food for our family. And then along came Kip. The Mansfield Microfarm project was the perfect opportunity to take some of the work we were already doing to the next level. It really accelerated our ability to make a meaningful impact on the community and provide an infusion of investment that has completely transformed three previously vacant lots into a vibrant, productive urban farm. The Richland Gro-Op was formed to support the Mansfield Microfarm project and provide an outlet for farmers to sell their produce. Beyond that, it has established a community of growers that work together to make a difference in the broader community. It provided a catalyst for us to grow more food and embark on a larger beautification effort on our properties. RGO established a rallying point around which a diverse group of farmers could invest their time and efforts to make a larger difference in the community than any one of us could have individually. At its core, RGO was formed in order to generate a social impact, both directly in the neighborhoods where the farms are located, but also through the ripple effect of economic activity in and around those neighborhoods. Thank you, and I will hand it off to Walt now.
Terrific. I'm going to just give Walt a really quick introduction. Thank you so much, Matthew. And I guess we'll circle back around once Walter is done. So I first met Walt, I believe, about 2 years ago now it was. And again, it was Deanna West Torrance. You know, for anybody who's thinking about doing these from a university perspective, you need an anchor community partner like our North End Community Improvement Collaborative. And she said, I just met this guy, Walt Bonham. He just moved back to town. He's got ideas about doing stuff with food. He's an entrepreneur. He's really smart. Go talk to him. And I sat down with Walt, I think the next afternoon, and he just shared with me some of his ideas. And over the next 6 months or so, it became obvious to me that we had an incredible business mind ready to jump into the center of this. And Walt has, and I think it goes without saying from all of us on the project, made this happen on the ground. He got our microfarm kits assembled on time, in budget, again and again and again. And he's been running his own microfarm, as well as other business opportunities that he's developed. We're lucky to have him, and you know, he really makes this system hum. So without further ado, Walt Bonham, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Kip, and thank you everybody for being on the call. Like Kip said, when he met me, I was just really trying to figure out a bunch of things. I kind of took a big leap into faith, took a big leap of faith, excuse me, into growing my business and into committing myself to food. So I was able to meet Kip through, like you said, Deanna, with NECIC, who allowed me to be able to consult on this project and also be attendant and farmer. Going to get into my screen sharing here. All right, there we go. So I started a small business called the Food Lab. I had the idea that I wanted to build, grow, feed. So help other people grow food, grow my own food, and then go beyond just growing the produce and actually putting it in people's stomach. So again, I was able to do that with the help of NECIC here. This is our urban farm sign right outside our gate here. You know, can't say enough about their opportunity that they gave me to be able to consult on the project, flood them with different ideas and things to do, and just be involved overall. All right, so this is what you see right here. This is kind of what it looked like before we got things started. Everything to the right of that service road, this 12-acre farm there was able to be leased by NECIC from our partners, Gorman Rupp. And then you can see right there a few houses right to the left of that service road. The farm is right in the community. And this is more or less what it looks like now. So you can see those houses right across the street there. You can see we have 8 tunnels on site here. Each tunnel has 10 outside beds as well. 8 beds inside of 4 sets of these tunnels. And then the last set in the back has 10 beds in the back. My farm is actually located in the very, very back there. If you see on this straight line, I am tunnels 5 and 6. Right, so once again, I am attendant on NECIC's property here, and we plan on doing a lot more expanding. So we'll do more expanding on here for training, trying to get more farmers involved. Me, myself personally, I could have never been involved with this project without the opportunity that Kip came to us with. I could have never been able to farm. I didn't have the ability to be able to buy land, couldn't afford the assets and things. And I was more or less getting into catering and had hopes to grow my own food. And, you know, being a part of this project allowed me to really just get involved right away with growing my own food and being able to cater and things and stuff as well. So just kind of how you build an urban farm on a former brownfield, you know, just one screw at a time, literally one screw at a time, one board at a time. Tons of construction done, tons of hours, tons of support, tons of boards and soil brought in. And this is kind of what it looked like when it got finished. This is actually at our ribbon cutting. So when we even had our ribbon cutting, we didn't even have seeds in the ground. We are definitely a new cooperative. We are literally just completed our first full summer. So, you know, this was a very exciting time just to get everything complete and actually take something from nothing, make something out of nothing here on a former brownfield. So this is showing you a few pictures inside of my tunnels. This is some cucumbers that I had growing in there. Companion planting, some tomatoes and basil, salad mix. This is what about over 1,000 pounds of carrots looks like. And there's more visuals. You know, you got to really think of it. We are a brand new dot on the supply chain now. So now there's carrots, radishes, spinach, lettuce, all different types of things, tomatoes, cucumbers, and things growing where there were no vegetables growing before. So it's really kind of cool to kind of see this stuff really kind of happen in the community, right here in the community. And this is my favorite part of it all, right? Being actually able to serve that food, right? So in all 3 of these catering events, I was able to use not only food grown by the Gro-Op, but also some other local farms in a few of these too. So that's really what it's about to me, being able to do the build, grow, feed, be able to connect the dots and be able to be a profitable entrepreneur, and a part of such a big project in this community. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kip. I know there's probably a ton of different questions and things. Please come out and visit the site. We'll share the information about the farm and things like that, but please get out here. I know it's not a lot of time to talk about everything, but I hope to see you guys out here for a visit. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much, Walter. Really appreciate it. And that's right. Please reach out to any of the three of us, as well as to come and see any one of the farms. You can come and visit. Urban Farm is probably the easiest because there's the most space there. But it's possible to come and look at it. And there really is nothing like seeing this thing on the ground, I have to say. So guys, I want to just talk a little bit about this experience. I think probably all three of us 3 years ago would never have imagined ourselves on a panel of this kind, talking about cooperatives and the, what we're building here. But I wonder if each of you would reflect a little bit, I talk a little bit about the community of folks who make up the Richland Gro-Op and some of the experiences that you guys have had over the last year and a half, year and 3/4 now, in taking that nascent idea that we worked with Hannah on in the fall of 2018 and realizing it. And Matt, I'll start with you and then pass it to Walter.
Yeah, it really is a diverse group of people who are involved, from, like my wife and I, and living close to downtown with a relatively large family, to some people who are doing this in their retirement. So, and it really, the cooperative has really provided the opportunity for us to kind of do things together that none of us would have been able to do on our own. And I think the other, maybe not unique, but nice thing about the group of people is there is a focus on the social justice and the sustainability. So while we're not certified organic from the very beginning, that has been part of what we want to work towards and what we are working towards. So there's a like-mindedness on some of the large 30,000 foot view, but there's also a great amount of diversity kind of on the individual level.
I would say something really unique about us is everybody does something different. Nobody was a farmer coming into this cooperative. Everybody had different professions, different backgrounds, different ages. So everybody kind of had something, but had a lot of different qualities to be able to offer the cooperative. And you really kind of see it now in the way that we do things and the way that we operate as a group. We're all learning how to farm together. We're all learning how to be successful as a farm cooperative together. And it creates a little bit of a unique experience versus us all being apple farmers and, coming together to try to find like a better market or something like that. And kind of like Matt was saying, it allows us to focus on bigger pictures and things as well, even outside of becoming farmers, and just being able to work on growing farmers and actually doing something different in the community that didn't have anything like this before.
Yeah, and my sort of favorite thing in the world, which has been missing since COVID, is and was showing up for the farmer training, where all 12 trainees were there together, and the kind of rapport that developed between you guys, it was really kind of remarkable. And we've seen happen already kind of multiple times, the fact of all being in this together being something that helped lift people who might have on their own not been able to get through or get over a particular hump. And I think that the opportunity for that it sort of continues to be developed so that we can have your cooperative financially sustainable by the end of this. Elizabeth Schuster, I would say visit before it gets cold. I meant to answer online, but I don't understand how the Q&A thing works, so it says I need to answer you directly. But in the age of climate change, it stays warm well into December. However, I think setting that up is good. So just another sort of general question for both of you, and that's about the sort of surprises or challenges. Like, I think we could spend a lot of time feeling really good about this community of practice that we've developed and just the great friendships and relationships that we've developed around it. But we would be being dishonest to our audience if we didn't also acknowledge that, boy, it sure comes with some surprising things, and it sure comes with some challenges that maybe we didn't think about. And I wonder if each of you would reflect on that as well.
Yeah, I kind of the first off the cuff is that we are a diverse group of people, and that's a challenge in and of itself. So there's, you know, everybody has a different way of looking at things and thinking about things, and there's no, the nature of the co-op, there's no real central authority to say this is what we're doing. So it's really kind of navigating that difference of opinions and finding the right way forward for the co-op that doesn't leave any of the members behind is one of the challenges. And I think secondly, and this would kind of go to Josh Knight's question in the Q&A box, is financially this is a huge investment. And while the grant underwrote the initial installation, pretty much every farm has discovered there are additional costs that go into this. So for us specifically, we had to get electric and water from our house, you know, across 2 vacant lots to where the farm is, because there was no water and electric on that site. And you know, we've had some challenges with the city, and it's something new for them, and they don't fully understand how to cope with it. And so there's been a lot of back and forth with zoning and codes and permits to kind of understand what we're trying to do and make sure that we're not, you know, violating any of their regulations, but still being able to operate.
Thanks, Matthew. Walter, any thoughts on challenges or surprises for you?
Yeah, I would say that I think really the biggest challenge was just literally, you know, doing something that has never been done before. You know, there's no urban farming going on here. There's no, you know, there weren't any carrots being sold out of Mansfield in this type of quantity and quality. So I think that, you know, no matter how you write it down, how you figure it out, you know, you kind of definitely had to deal with just getting something like this up and going and just dealing with those daily challenges and things. I mean, I think that's kind of really the biggest thing, if I was to sum it up, is just to try to say that just embracing it and knowing that there was definitely going to be a ton of things that were going to happen when you're doing something that hasn't been done in the community that hasn't seen anything like this happen before.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to just take a quick stab at Josh's question as well, and that is the microfarm project, the FFAR project, is asking that question as well. What is it? What makes them sustainable? And tentatively, it's that our farmers are able to sustain themselves, and that the cooperative is able to pay its way. Essentially, can it pay for the aggregation space, for the materials it needs, and for the marketing that it needs? And we're in the process of kind of doing a dust settling accounting of what happened in this year, where we finally have everything up, but we didn't have everything up for the whole year, to take a much more robust and data based look at what we're capable of producing in these spaces and what we can anticipate for next year. I want to circle back, guys, to the fall of 2018, and I actually really want to give a shout out to the Piketon Center and the cooperatives. And I wonder if you guys would just remember back on how important it was to have that center and to have OSU Extension and to have those assets and the guidance of Hannah, and I think Ivory was there at the time. I'll start with you, Walt, and then Matthew.
Hannah knows I used to love those sessions. I used to love everybody getting together and working out all these problems and figuring out stuff. And we definitely needed guidance. I mean, like I said, everybody was different. Nobody was farming. We didn't have this same. We had common goals, but we didn't have all of our assets together and everything together to be able to organize without having good leadership. And I think that's really what they brought. They brought great leadership, showed us how it's supposed to be done. And how other people are doing it, and then could answer a lot of those tough questions, because it was really challenging for a lot of people, and we didn't have the answers. We didn't have experience with cooperatives. We didn't know any direct cooperatives that we could work with in our local community. So I think it just really helped answer a lot of questions and gave us the confidence we needed to connect.
Yeah, and I would echo that, and also just saying having the hands-on, the ability to do everything hands-on rather than just kind of learn about it. Before we were kind of thrust into being on our own was very valuable, and kind of building that camaraderie as a group and getting to know each other, and how each of us works, and understanding where we needed to kind of step up and help people who are maybe not as strong in one area, and then understanding where our own weaknesses were, and being able to ask people to step up and help us in those areas too. I think that was a huge help.
Yeah, those were really, it was exciting, and it was interesting because really at that point we didn't know if we had a grant coming along, but we had suddenly, just because of the resources, created the momentum for there to be a cooperative. And I think we were even talking about, well, what do we do if the grant doesn't come? Because now we get a cooperative on our hands. We're gonna have to do something. So it was a good thing it came through. Peggy Williams has asked how we were able to engage the residents to participate in this. And so I'm going to start by saying the North End Community Improvement Collaborative, I keep talking about Deanna West Torrance. I would like each of you to just reflect for a minute on Deanna West Torrance and the presence of that institution and its role in making this possible.
Yeah, I'll start. We've known Deanna for almost 10 years now. Almost shortly after we moved in, we kind of got hooked up with NECIC, and the work that they do in the community and engaging the community is second to none. And I think without them, it'd be hard to get a pulse on what the community wants, what would be viable in the neighborhood. They really have the finger on the pulse of the north end of Mansfield and understand it in a way that any one of us as individuals don't. And I think that's critical to the success of the project, because a lot of groundwork was already being laid unbeknownst to anybody for this project before they even came into town. And NECIC and Deanna West Torrance really gets the credit for that.
Walter?
Deanna really, she gave me a huge chance to not only to consult on the project and help her develop this area and develop her farm and take on the responsibilities for an entity to put a farm in the community. But even beforehand, I was the community garden organizer for the NECIC, and I knew nothing about growing anything but a smorgasbord for the local animals to eat. And luckily that job had organizer on the end of it, because I was able to bring my business background in and get things organized and so on. She really gave me a huge chance to get involved and kind of allowed me to get introduced to Kip and to kind of lead me into the position I am now. So definitely, big thanks for her giving me a chance and just allowing me to get involved. And literally when I moved back, she was somebody that I was told to reach out to, because I had aspirations as far as growing and doing community work and those type of things. So it just worked out perfect.
Yeah, I think, and Peggy, I think the key from the Ohio State perspective here is that the work that was done in community organizing and by NECIC, which was rooted in asset-based community development, strategic planning. And so they'd identified assets, they'd identified ambitions, and this simply catalyzed all of those towards a single point. And in the catalyzing, realized, how much knowledge and ability exists already in the extension network of Ohio State University, and was able to focus that very specifically on a set of problems that were, sort of already arising for individuals, but suddenly it became a system problem. I'm going to answer Amy's question quickly on marketing, or maybe Matthew, I'll put that to you. What kind of marketing is being done, Matthew?
Well, one of the things that attracted Amanda and I to this project was that we didn't have to do the marketing. There was going to be a cooperative that would sell the produce on our behalf, and all we had to do was worry about growing it. So we have a marketing manager that is provided through the project. The one we're on our second one, and he was hired by the cooperative, but he's currently being his salary currently being paid for through the project. But he's really it's a lot of building relationships and kind of hustling, going to local grocery stores, going to local restaurants, talking to local institutions, and trying to build those relationships and understanding what they're looking for, so that we can have a better understanding of what to produce, so that he can sell it.
And I would say, we are, like any startup business, in the process of establishing our brand and establishing our buyer relationships. And Andy is very hard at work, figuring out where are the right places, where do we get the right price point, at what kinds of volumes. And our goal, I think, as a cooperative, is to deliver on whatever promises Andy makes on our behalf in terms of our growing. Lisa's got a complicated set of questions here about sustainability. So sustainability, generally speaking, I think, is at the heart of this. And our goal is both to make this farm a viable supplemental for Matthew, viable supplemental for Walt, and in the foundation of a larger business that he's growing. And as Matthew said, I think all of our growers are focused on, while nobody's organic at this point, naturally grown, and the principles of that. So to reduce the kinds of ecological impacts that it would have. We'll know the answer to some of that at the end of this research. We've got a researcher in the School of Architecture who's flying drones and taking pictures and measuring the simple biodiversity, essentially, to see how what we're doing impacts some of that. At the moment, we don't have dollars on food miles. So you raise a whole lot of really interesting questions. And what we'd like to do as this system grows is find ways to connect, in particular, SENR students to some of the really important questions that this system itself raises, so that we can continue to kind of probe the dimensions of what we have going on here. So we have intentionally tried to build a sustainable system that attends to market. We got to make money. We're all kind of worried about that, because we don't survive, we don't make money, and social justice and environment. And, it's a very delicate balance. And, we've got this opportunity to do it in a low risk space. And we are looking out at next year with a whole lot of measures coming in to tell us how well we're doing on all of that. So a lot of really great questions sorry, I've got a phone ringing in my ear, and I just apologize for that. Okay, go ahead, Matthew.
I was just going to say, I was add to that, especially on the urban sites, we're reclaiming land that would otherwise, so like the NECIC farms on a former brownfield. So we're reclaiming that for economic activity, but also building that back into a viable piece of land. And even on our own site, it was overgrown with invasive species and thistle and all kinds of stuff that was just, and we've been able to clear that out and provide a habitat now on our, I mean, it's amazing to me. We'll step out on a summer morning and the insect activity in our small urban lot it's just incredible what you hear, where, you know, 2 years ago, we didn't hear any of that. So.
Yeah, and I think that the same goes for the Gorman Rupp site.
Add on to that real quick too, though. I just wanted to say that this whole lot was vacant for about 10 years. I think over 10 years, about 11 years. And now we have also host a farmers market here that's brought in thousands of dollars over the summer and different things as well. So just kind of emphasizing what Matt said, you know, taking the brownfield and doing what we're doing now is just definitely making a huge impact in the community.
Yeah, it's so different to drive down that street now anymore as well. Lisa, the second part of your question is the model primarily concerned with viable incomes, or does it consider fair price food for local consumers? It is primarily concerned with income for farmers. So there is this other thing that happens though in the North End, and I think Matt can attest to the front porch phenomena. There, about a third of what's grown in these micro farms isn't marketable because it's not beautiful and it might have a small blemish or not quite the right color. And that food right now is going out into the community. It's going out at a lower cost or for free. We've donated a whole lot of it at this point. We're thinking about ways to create a value-added production for it, but there's always going to be surplus nutrition in that space as a byproduct of production itself. And so it's a really nice system residual that isn't the design of the system, but is an outcome of the system anyhow. And Matt, I think you guys, your porch has been full all summer long, is that right?
Yes, off and on, but yeah. So.
And you've also, Walt, were you talking about the farmers market? What's happened with that?
Oh yeah, NECIC had hosted a farmers market. This was the 5th year I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it was at the teaching garden around the corner. It was kind of tucked off. The teaching garden location was a little bit kind of hidden. And now it's moved to the urban farm here. And I mean, it's brought in so much traffic, so many questions. We also try to bring in other vendors too. So we've had other vendors here just to give out community information and things like that as well. We do match, we do snap match and different things like that also. And then one of the other biggest things I think that's really cool about our farmers market is it brings other farmers here that aren't even part of our cooperative. Right. So, you know, we've had like up to, I think one time it was like at least about 8 farmers here, and only one of them was a farmer from our cooperative, and some of the other cooperative members come in as they like. But I thought that was a really cool thing to be able to bring other farmers on, that other farmers in this area that aren't even a part of our project yet.
Yeah. Very community building elements to it. Jeremy, really quickly, it's the actual cost of materials to a site that it's unfinished and has no water and electricity is $50,000. There is also the training element for the producer. And one of the things our cooperative is trying to figure out is what's the benchmark for a farmer to come into this network? What's the quality, you know, what do they need to be able to do? And so for all of our farmers, it was 2 years of training. Someone starting fresh is going to need to do and possibly go through our training program as well. So there's a time cost included as well for new producers. One last question. I think we're in that kind of time period at this point, and that is about what as you look out at the year ahead, what you are sort of most concerned with resolving in order to kind of have this cooperative be a success. What's keeping you up at night?
I think for me, what keeps me up at night is the level of commitment that this takes, and making sure that, you know, all the farmers, including Amanda and myself, fully account for that commitment and are willing and able to make that commitment. I think this first year having a full farm for ourselves has really opened everybody's eyes to, you know, this is not a hobby farm. This is real work. And so, you know, moving forward, that commitment needs to be really kind of challenged at each farmer level in order for the cooperative to really be able to thrive moving forward.
Walter?
I guess what keeps me up at night is just wanting to continue to grow and expand this place. I think we're dealing with the normal things you would deal with any type of business, especially first year. But I think outside of that, the biggest things that I kind of worry about is just wanting to really turn this into, a huge urban farm, a huge site, a destination location in Ohio. That type of thing. Make it a real big community project, and really finding bigger buyers too. Part of us growing and expanding and bringing on more farmers and trying to help people who don't have the opportunity to farm be able to farm is we need the market, right? So we need more sales. So just really trying to help finding more buyers and things like that as well. So as we bring on more farmers, we can make sure we can support them with the income they need to continue to farm.
Right, and it is a delicate business balance. My goal for the project is that we increase revenue so that the cooperative is sustainable, economically sustainable at the end of next year. That probably means adding some growers, and then I'm hard at work trying to kind of double down on what's the core purpose of this cooperative and this whole effort, and that is to bring wealth creating opportunities into low opportunity neighborhoods. And so that means 5 more micro farms in the north end of Mansfield. That means a new set, maybe 5 or more in Marion. Maybe we have some growers who are interested in coming in from Columbus, but growing this opportunity in the spaces where it was designed to be most directed and most effective. Jeremy, to the second part of your question, which is, it is the perennial one. So if I grew up on a farm, farmers are independent, ruggedly independent. They like to make all their own decisions. This is different than that, in that the goal is to create market connectivity and to create opportunity for farmers at the highest price point possible, right? So you're selling as much as you can at the highest price point. That is, we believe, better served and leveraged by the marketer, by Andy, by the role that he has on the market, who then turns around and says, this is what you need to grow to make this happen. We have the advantage from the project perspective right now to be able to essentially tell farmers what they're doing and what to do. But it's, I think, part of the practice of being a member is that you sign on to, look, I'm coming into this not so that the cooperative can sell whatever it is that I decide to grow, but I'm coming into it because the cooperative experiences leverages my ability to make more dollars off of the site that I have. And it's that advantage that gives me economic freedom when I might not have intellectual freedom on deciding about my crops. And it's a kind of a trade-off system.
All right, so I think we have to conclude the session with Kip, Walt, and Matthew now, but thank you so much. That was such a terrific overview, and it was great to have all 3 of your perspectives throughout. Nicole's going to be posting in the chat your email contacts, so if you do want to follow up with Kip, Walt, Matthew, please go ahead and do so via email. And as we've shared, this will be recorded and posted on YouTube by next week. So I want to hand it over to Dr. Tom Worley, Director of the CFAES Center for Cooperatives here at Ohio State, who will give some concluding remarks.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to have just experienced the last hour and to hear much more details about the project up in Mansfield than I had been privy to up to this point. And it's definitely on my places to visit in the future once we're traveling about a bit more. But I thought that the presenters, Walt and Matt and Kip, did an excellent job, especially about the very elements of a cooperative, and even the preliminary Ryan Schmiesing talking about community-based. That lines up with the co-op idea. Cathann talked about rallying around a need that can't be solved, and you folks then applied that in the Mansfield example, that here's a need, that we have this vacant land, we have a food shortage of fresh produce, there's opportunity in the marketplace. Let's put these things together. And I'm very pleased with the progress that you all have made. and wish you the very best in the future. And I think the other thing I wanted to just pick up on that came out was Ryan talking about even some of the internal grant programs out of outreach and engagement, relying much more on evaluation. And Kip alluded to this with the FFAR grant, that there's a big evaluation component that requires data, and data will drive the future in sustainability. And I think Doug O'Brien touched on that as well, as big data from the more extensive corn, soybeans, and the larger agriculture and farmers that are involved, that across the board, data is going to be the important thing, and that co-ops, in fact, have a role, and a trusted role, in dealing with farmer data, as opposed to investor-owned commercial interest as fertilizer seed companies or equipment companies. So I think that's certainly a exciting part of what the future for co-ops involves. And so again, I think that just to repeat a lot of things, but being a grassroots movement, kind of the idea of camaraderie, learning together, solving a problem together, and rallying around a need. Kudos to all of you. And then just briefly, as I finish up, I serve as the director of our Center for Co-ops, but as you all know, Hannah is kind of the heart and soul and gets the job done. Appreciate her work with you folks up in Mansfield with the Gro-Op, and the good report I heard about the effort that was made up there. Brad Bergerford is part of our shop down at South Centers, and along with Matt Kleinhens, lots of experience with high tunnels and specialty crops. And so I just acknowledge that activity as part of the success as well. And I would just wrap up saying that our center, for those of you that are in the audience, does assist with efforts like this. And if you have the idea that you want to pursue this in a different place or a slightly different model, Hannah and the team at South Centers and our Center for Co-ops is very available to facilitate some of that discussion, make connections. I think the idea of cooperation among co-ops, and that's exactly what you were talking about, trying to expand in scales, very aware of other activities in different parts of the state that we've had some contact with and can make those connections. So I will stop at this point, and I think it goes back to Jeff Sharp that may be getting close to the final words. Jeff?
Great, thank you, Tom, for those concluding remarks. As is our EPN tradition, we want to recognize our featured panelists, Kip, Matthew, and Walt from the Richland Gro-Op, with the Certificate of Appreciation and thanks for your participation today, albeit in electronic form. It's working out pretty well, I think, with these webinars in terms of the presentation format. So we'll have to sort of like experiment with this even post-COVID as to how we can sort of deliver this kind of programming, because I think it opens it up to a lot of different people. This program and our presenters today, along with many environmental professionals who participated, are helping us learn for life and to positively shape our world. As has been mentioned before, the EPN developed this program in collaboration with several Ohio State entities and would not have come together without the behind-the-scenes work of Hannah Scott, Program Manager for CFAES' Center for Cooperatives, and contributions from Josh Knights, Director of Partnerships with the Sustainability Institute. Please note that the EPN returns on the morning of Tuesday, December 1st. This December EPN virtual event is set up in it will be a really cool program. First, it will feature an educational component with Blueprint Columbus and their approach to eliminating sanitary sewer overflows while also investing in Columbus neighborhoods and the local economy, and to share how its program partners with senior capstone courses in Ohio State School of Environment and Natural Resources and the Department of Food, Agriculture, and Biological Engineering. For those of you that are regulars at the EPN, the December session is always one of my favorites, where we have the students setting up, sort of delivering their programs and talking about some of the capstone projects they've done. And it's always a very enlightening time. We're going to try to replicate some of that with this event, but it will not be quite the same, but we look forward to highlighting those capstone projects. Expert faculty at this event will share about how to develop university partnerships that teach students how to integrate technical knowledge with social and policy research, community outreach, and the overlaps with the professions in environmental management and engineering. Then this program will move all participants into breakout sessions hosted by senior capstone students who themselves will share briefly about their capstone project work and answer questions about participating with Blueprint Columbus through remote learning. This virtual program is designed to be an interactive, participatory, and educational event. Please visit epn.osu.edu to register today. If you have any questions about this program, then please reach out to Nicole and Joe. On a related note, and keeping in the theme of sort of highlighting the Mansfield campus, I have been just so amazed at sort of like the creativity that's emanated at that campus and the way the community's responded. On the screen, you'll see the details for our maple syrup sale, which originated through a student capstone project based at our Mansfield campus. It's been a wonderful space that we've explored over the last couple of years, and a number of students uncovered a sugar bush there. And one thing led to another, and we've been able to develop a very high production facility up there that we have a lot of maple syrup for sale. Funds from this maple syrup sale go back into the operation of the Mansfield Sugar Bush, produce several student scholarships and internships, woodland management research, and support maple-based outreach for natural resource professionals, landowners, and students. Please visit the website listed on the screen, woodlandstewards.osu.edu/maple, to purchase your Ohio State maple syrup today. It can be shipped, and it's also available for pickup at the Franklin County Extension Office. For me personally, I've used the maple syrup as a great gift to family and friends, and gave it to a bunch of our staff last year. So it's a great project, and we have these wonderful commemorative bottles, and it's officially branded Ohio State University maple syrup. So your friends and family will probably enjoy that sort of treat. Thanks again to all of you who participated for today's program. Please stay safe and well connected. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.